Louie Reyes was born into a neighborhood where music threaded through daily life. Radio ballads from the West, church choirs on Sundays, and a low hum of musicians rehearsing in small halls. From a young age, Louie was restless with ordinary sounds, leaning instead toward the warm, improvisational language of jazz. Early mentors included an uncle who kept a battered stack of 78s and a school music teacher who encouraged private practice after class. Those records introduced Louie to phrasing, breathing, and the vocal elasticity of the great American jazz singers. Louie learned to listen first and then to answer the music with a voice that favored nuance over volume. His formative influences were broad and reverent. Ella Fitzgerald's effortless scat, Sarah Vaughan's velvet control, and the plaintive honesty of Billie Holiday each left their mark. Louie also absorbed local traditions, Kundiman melodies, folk storytelling, and the intimate delivery of Filipino ballads. The result was a singer who could slip from a smoky jazz standard into a native lullaby without losing emotional continuity. Early gigs were modest, community halls, cafe nights, and the odd radio variety show. But they became the laboratory where Louie refined timing, dynamics, and a trademark phrasing that turned simple lyrics into small confessions. Career peak. By the early 1970s, Louie Reyes had become a fixture on the city's growing jazz circuit. The scene itself was evolving. Clubs that once hosted imported bands were now incubators for local talent, and Louie stepped into a space hungry for voices that could bridge global jazz language with Filipino feeling. Louie's breakout arrived not through a single chart hit, but through a series of live performances and a handful of recordings that captured a warm, conversational approach to material. Audiences responded to the intimacy in Louie's delivery, the way every line felt addressed to a single listener, even in a crowded room. The 70s brought collaborations that expanded Louie's range. He shared stages with leading instrumentalists, joined studio sessions with arrangers who favored lush horn charts, and recorded duets that married jazz sensibility to pop accessibility. Notable performances included extended sets at marquee venues where Louie could stretch a ballad into a 15-minute exploration, and televised specials that introduced jazz phrasing to viewers more accustomed to mainstream pop. Critics praised a combination of technical fluency and emotional restraint. Louie never oversang, preferring instead to let silence and breath shape a phrase. Touring also defined this period. Louie's concerts traveled beyond the capital to provincial theaters and international festivals where Filipino artistry met global audiences. Those cross-border dates reinforced a reputation as an interpreter rather than a mimic. Louie absorbed stylistic cues, but always translated them through a local pulse. Studio recordings from this era, standard covers reimagined, and a few original compositions became reference points for younger singers searching for a template that balanced sophistication and accessibility. The forgotten years. The 1980s and 1990s were unkind to many jazz practitioners as popular tastes shifted toward unabashed pop, rock, and novelty entertainment. Venues closed, variety shows restructured their lineups, and the machinery that once promoted jazz recordings reoriented around faster-selling genres. Louie's music, predicated on patience and intimacy, found fewer commercial pathways. Record labels trimmed their jazz rosters, radio playlists narrowed, and the cultural spotlight narrowed with them. Louie did not vanish. Rather, the arc of public recognition contracted. Economic realities pushed many seasoned musicians into steadier work. Studio sessions for commercials, backing vocals for pop records, teaching, and smaller private engagements. Louie embraced some of these shifts while resisting others. He accepted studio work that paid the bills and taught workshops to pass on phrasing techniques. But he also continued to pursue small concert projects that satisfied artistic needs rather than market demands. The media's appetite for novelty in youth marginalized veteran craftspeople, and, over time, the headlines that once celebrated Louie's name grew rare. Part of the fading was also structural. Documentation of live performance in that era was uneven, preservation limited, and many recordings remained out of circulation or locked in private archives. Without continuous reissues, fresh promotional campaigns, or viral moments, memory thinned. Younger listeners discovered jazz through new channels that emphasized instrumental virtuosity or fusion hybrids. And Louie's particular blend of subdued storytelling did not always register in those discovery loops. The result was an artist who remained deeply respected within musician circles, yet was less visible to a broader public that moves on quickly. Legacy and impact. Louie Reyes' lasting imprint is quieter than a best-selling pop record, but more durable in its influence. For singers who studied the craft intimately, Louie became a masterclass in phrasing, restraint, and narrative interpretation. Vocalists cite Louie not simply for technical lessons, but for a philosophy of performance. That a song's meaning is revealed in the pauses and the choice to leave a line unresolved. Students from Louie's workshops passed those lessons forward, embedding a lineage of taste into new generations of jazz and soul performers. Beyond pedagogy, Louie's recordings, when they resurface in tribute sets or archival reissues, remind listeners of a time when jazz performance prioritized conversation over spectacle. Musicians who collaborated with Louie remember a colleague who valued ensemble voice, who could shepherd an instrumental break with a single supportive phrase, and who treated bandleaders and sidemen with the same respect he gave audiences. That professional generosity seeded a collaborative culture among session players and helped maintain a discreet but vibrant jazz ecosystem. Culturally, Louie's work contributed to a national vocabulary of emotional honesty in music. By translating American jazz idioms into local expression, Louie helped create a space where Filipino sensibility could dialogue with global styles without being subsumed by them. Contemporary artists who weave jazz phrasing into pop or R&B traces often stand on techniques Louie popularized: conversational breath, elastic timing, and the art of understatement. In the years after he stepped away from mass attention, a slow rediscovery began among archivists, music scholars, and dedicated fans. Tribute concerts, reissued recordings, and oral histories reintroduced Louie's voice to younger audiences seeking depth in a fast-paced media environment. Those efforts reframed Louie not as a forgotten footnote, but as a touchstone for what mature, humane singing can offer: emotional clarity, technical discipline, and a refusal to equate volume with meaning. Louie Reyes was a jazz singer who turned intimate phrasing and emotional restraint into a signature voice of the 1970s. Though public attention faded, his influence lives on through the singers he mentored, the recordings being rediscovered, and a quiet legacy that taught generations how to make every note feel personal.